Okay, so it's Monday morning. You just poured a fresh cup of coffee. You remember to print the agenda, and the meeting's starting in about 5 minutes, and you are determined not to be late. But instead of heading into the conference room, you're heading over to your dining room table. You're booting up your computer, and your heart starts to pound. You begin to feel some anxiety, and all you can think is, I really hope my internet is working today. I hope I connect to the meeting, and I really hope that I'm not late. I wish I could say you're not alone and that would fix everything. But the truth is, experiencing the virtual meeting space for most of us is a really intimidating process. Maybe we haven't spent any time in the virtual space. It's a world we have no experience in, or maybe we just can't imagine how are we going to accomplish the same things in this tiny little box. Well, the not so great news is we're here. The here and now is requiring us to get very comfy cozy with the virtual space. The great news is I'm going to show you in 5 simple steps how to feel like a virtual meeting ninja. So if you're ready, we're going to get started and jump right in. Step number 1 is embrace the technical snafus. Here's the deal, they're going to happen. In 2010, Steve Jobs went to announce the iPhone 4, and he clicked on the iPhone to project an image up on the wall, and guess what happened? He got an error message because the network was overloaded. That's right, the king of technology had a technical snafu while the entire world was waiting and watching for his big announcement. So here's the deal, the technical snafus are going to happen, and we want to embrace them. And we want to learn from them. So when they do happen, we want to stop and ask ourselves the question, okay, what happened? And what can I learn from that experience? So it might be, maybe I didn't practice enough. Maybe I didn't research enough. Or maybe I really need to call in some technical support. So make sure we're paying attention to those mistakes. It's not a time to critique yourself. It's a time to learn. The other deal too is as you're learning this, be sure to share with your team. So keep a little checklist, or I like to call a best practice tips list from firsthand experience of what doesn't work so well, and be sure to share that with your team. Step number 2, don't wing it. Come prepared. And what I mean by that is you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to know all the ins and outs of the program that you're using, but you do need to know 4 fundamental things. You need to know how to schedule the meeting. You need to know how to invite people to the meeting. You need to know how to manage the meeting. And you need to know, are there any technical requirements for attending and participating in the meeting? Like, in other words, do I have to dial in by phone? How do I participate through the chat box? Whatever's important to your meeting is what you're going to need to know ahead of time. So thank you, Google. Thank you, YouTube. You have a great opportunity to find answers to these very basic questions in just a couple of clicks. Step number 3, act like a pro. When you think of somebody who's professional, what makes them professional? Well, it's their consistent practice, right? So plan to use the virtual space as much as possible. So instead of picking up the phone to call someone, invite them to a virtual meeting, whether it's a customer, whether it's a coworker, whether it's your boss, or your friends wish that you could hang out after work today, and instead invite them to a social gathering. The more you do in the virtual space, the more you'll feel comfortable with it, and it'll feel less intimidating in those moments that you really need it for work and you need to be able to show up and make it work. Most platforms offer a test run. So if you're curious about, okay, well, what does this look like when I'm inside the meeting? Number 1, you can use those test models through the program online, or invite somebody to test run with you. Just this week, I was using a brand new program, GoToMeeting, and I had never used that program before. So I invited a coworker to do a test run with me, and guess what? We had glitches the entire way. So from the moment we were entering the meeting to communicating to seeing each other, but we had spent that time to troubleshoot those issues. And guess what? I took some notes, wrote them down, so next time I'll be more equipped to deal with those. Step number 4 is a quality check, and we're going to start with the fundamental basics. Number 1, make sure your computer is plugged in. Nothing worse than starting a meeting, getting ready to launch a meeting, and you don't have the juice in your battery to run the meeting. So make sure you're plugged in. The other thing is make sure your phone is charged. You are going to need your cell phone to manage texting, emails for participants who are not able to get in, your troubleshooting technology, or maybe you need to actually dial in and use the phone for your audio and mic. So just make sure that it's plugged in or at least charged. This is the most important piece of the quality check. Make sure you're there early. I recommend 20 minutes. You want to boot up your computer, be in the program, start the meeting, make sure that you're testing your microphone, testing your audio, making sure all those pieces are there. And you're also, which we'll talk about in a moment, going to need time to help others troubleshoot technology. Keep a checklist next to you for the technical steps on how to run the meeting. So remember in the step where we talked about doing some basic research, like how to facilitate the meeting, how to manage participants, you want to keep those notes directly next to you so you have access to them during the meeting. So I actually keep just this clipboard. You can see I've got my little clips on it. Next to me at all times with notes and checklists so that I can better navigate the technical space once I'm in it. Here's a tip a lot of people don't think about. Think about where you're positioned inside of the screen. So right now, I'm fairly close to the screen with about 2 inches or so available above my head in the top of the screen. There's nothing worse than being in a meeting with somebody who's hanging on for dear life, kind of buried in quicksand and wondering if they're actually going to join the meeting. So pull your computer screen down, make sure you have just a small space above your head and that you're somewhere in the middle or even slightly off to the side. That way you're not distracting just from your physical presence inside the screen. Be sure you're using some type of ear device. This helps to control background noise. It creates a much cleaner, crisp sound and engagement with your group. And you can use wireless. You can use wires, totally kosher to have wired earphones, but make sure you're using something that has a built-in mic as well. Last but not least, step number 5, set up your participants for success. This means you're going to give them tips on how to join the meeting. This includes the link to join, the dial-in number in case their computer is not equipped with a microphone and audio, and making sure that they arrive early too, at least 10 minutes so that you can troubleshoot any technical issues. Let them know the meeting will start on time, that you will be there early to help them through the process. Let them know if they're required to use a specific internet browser. Perhaps the program you're using is more compatible with Firefox or Chrome or Internet Explorer, whatever it might be, make sure they're aware. And let them know if they're going to need to download the program. They might be prompted when they're signing into the meeting, or they might have to do it in advance of the meeting to join. And they too should be using some type of earphone with a microphone. And if not, they can certainly use their phone. Just make sure they're in a quiet space with little to none background noise. So that's it, 5 simple steps. And you certainly, no matter where you're starting, can be a virtual meeting ninja. And we know this is a challenging time. We've got a lot of pressure on us. So if you can, bring your sense of humor and willingness to make mistakes and fumble. Learn from them, take notes, and definitely tap into your team, asking them, are you familiar with this platform? Do you have any experience? Are you willing to experiment with me? And I will say that I'm happy to help if you need some assistance in the virtual space in terms of facilitating or presenting in the virtual space. I'm mostly familiar with Zoom, but I'm happy to troubleshoot issues with you, technical issues, anything you're experiencing. Certainly feel free to reach out to myself or anyone else on the EANE team. Well, thanks so much for joining me, and best of luck to you in the virtual world.